In this video, I will be teaching you guys how to learn to itemize properly on mid heroes. Similar to the previous itemization video, the first thing you need to know is the default build for your hero. By default build, I mean the basic build that people buy on that hero regardless of the situation they are in. Let's say on Puck, people can default to her basic build, which is Bottle, Treads, Witchblade, Blink, Kaya Sange, and Octarine, for example. If you're unsure what the default build is for the hero you're trying to learn to itemize on, go to Road to Pro Tracker and search for the hero. Once you figure out the basic build, then you move on to modifying this build to adapt to different situations. It would be beneficial to also know what kind of items can be bought to fit the kit of your hero role as well. In order to modify your build to different scenarios where your default build might not work, you need to ask yourself these questions. Question number 1. What does my hero excel at? You need to think for a second about the hero you are playing. What is the part about your hero that makes it a strong hero? In Puck's case, he excels at being elusive, catching heroes, and having a short cooldown spells that allow him to do high amounts of magical damage and be generally annoying in fights. Puck's kit allows him to wait spells and become a hard target to take down. Your goal in terms of itemization is to make sure your itemization allows your hero to do the stuff your hero is good at. Question number 2. What stops my hero from doing what it likes to do? Now you have to think about some general things that stop your hero from excelling. For Puck, spells that don't allow him to be elusive. This can include silences, disables, heroes, items, or spells that don't allow him to do magical damage to heroes are a few things you can consider. Some examples of the spells or item effects that can catch Puck are any type of instant catch spell like Hex, Roots, Silences, instant bursting spells like Tiny Stun Toss Combo, etc. Some examples of the hero's items or spells that don't allow him to do magical damage or catch are BKB, Lifestealer's Rage, Juggernaut's Blade Fury, Nyx's Spike Carapace, high HP heroes like Centaur, etc. that Puck can't burst. Hard dispel spells like Abaddon's Shield, LC's W allow heroes to get out of recoil very easily. Now that we've thought about some stuff, we have to ask ourselves question number 3. How do I overcome all of these issues? In order to overcome the issues we've discussed before that disrupt the ideal game for our hero, we need to itemize in a way that progresses our game towards ideality. Most of the spells that can catch Puck can either be dodged by phase shift if they are a projectile or ground spell. If they are targeted spell like Hex, Silence, in order to counter that, you need to identify how many of those spells does the enemy have. Let's say the enemy has a Loyan who is constantly catching you with his targeted spell Hex, but other than that, they don't have decent catch for you. You have two choices. One is Kaya Sange that gives you status resistance and decent amount of sustain, and the other is to buy an item that counters targeted spells. When you think about it, Linken's comes to mind. To decide which is better, you need to ask yourself, does the enemy have enough follow-up burst to kill me before the Hex goes away? If the answer is yes, then Kaya Sange won't help you survive. In this case, you can buy Linken's. As soon as Linken's pops, you can react with phase shift and blink out. Spells such as Doom, items such as Sight of Vice are also countered in a similar fashion. If you're in a game where you have multiple things to worry about, quite frankly, you picked Puck in the wrong game, and just itemization won't help. Similarly, for targeted silences such as Sky Silence, the same thought process is followed, except that when you are silenced, you aren't disabled. If you aren't disabled, you can use items and move. So what is an item that removes silences and also saves you from ground targeted burst, such as Sky's ult? When you think about it, Eul's comes to mind, as it dispels the silence and also keeps you in air that gives you enough time to get your blink cooldown off or use phase shift. There are other items such as Lotus Orb that also dispel silences, but they don't complement Puck's kit same way as Eul's does, as explained above. Eul's can also remove silences that aren't targeted, such as Global Silence, ground silences like Ricky's Smoke, and Night Stalker Silence, however, cannot be countered in the same way. So how do you deal with that? The way both these spells work is that Ricky's Smoke stays at the same place, whereas Night Stalker's Silence goes wherever the Night Stalker goes. So for the Ricky Smoke, you can move out of it and you're fine. So an item such as Force Staff can help. But what the fuck do you do against a Night Stalker? Well, it comes down to whether you can die in the duration of the silence. If yes, you have no choice but to buy BKB. If the answer is no, then you can buy sustain items like Kaya Sange or even in some cases, E-Blade. I will explain how to decide between E-Blade and Kaya Sange. Since both these items amplify the magic damage output from Puck, they are both viable options, but only one of them can be bought. Keeping everything we've discussed before in mind, we can conclude that Kaya and Sange is an item that provides Puck with sustain and amplifies the magic damage output. What does E-Blade offer that is different than Kaya and Sange? There are two things E-Blade does. One is that its active amplifies single target damage output by a long shot as compared to Kaya and Sange. And the second thing is that it can give you or your opponent ethereal form, which means you cannot be attacked by physical damage. Imagine you're in a situation where you don't need sustain to survive the spell damage, but instead you need to survive the physical damage output from the enemy. Like Night Stalker right clicks to do that combined with the silence. TA also only does physical damage. Draw Ranger right clicks to do that after using her silence on you. In these situations, using E-Blade on yourself is a better option than going for Kaya and Sange, which guarantees you're dead because Puck is a very squishy hero when it comes to the armor department. In order to deal with high burst damage combos such as Tiny Stun Toss that isn't targeted and also disables you, the only counter is to buy enough sustain that allows you to survive through the combo since Puck is a hero with very low armor and health pool. In this case, knowing the basic build and kit of Puck, what are the items that provide Puck with sustain? When you think about it, Treads and Kaya Sange are the items that fit Puck's kit and also help her survive. Aeon Disc is also an item that helps with that, but considering the cooldown on tiny spells and the cooldown of Aeon Disc, it doesn't serve a purpose. You'll have to play like a chicken until the Aeon Disc comes off cooldown. It can be a viable option against a Chrono, but then again, you never want to buy Aeon Disc in your first 4 items. Another thing that comes to mind when it comes to itemization is what order does one itemize? I've mentioned a shit ton of possibilities above which might have made you think, where the fuck do I fit all of these? Or at what point do I need to buy these items? I'll keep it as simple as I can. Once you figure out the basic build of your hero, Puck in this case, you should know that there are certain early items that never change in 95% of your games. With the exception of Treads, your items should always be something like this. Bottle, Brown Boots / Treads, Witchblade, Eels / Travels / Blink. Now comes the question of when to buy Treads and when to buy Travels. What do Treads provide us with? Treads give us attack speed and sustain. They complement very well with Witchblade because of the additional attack speed that allow us to attack more frequently combined with the additional plus 10 int that amplifies the damage from Witchblade. In short, Treads are bought when you are going to be involved in a lot of early fights. What do Travels provide us with? Travels give us the ability to play all over the map because of the low cooldown on the teleport, and also the extra movement speed that allows us to move around the map faster. The downside of Travels is that it's 1100 more gold as compared to Treads, which delays our timing for other items for a bit. So how do we decide which is better in different situations? Travels is better if your team does not have any hero that can show in lanes without the risk of dying. As Puck, you can shove in waves because you're elusive. Travels is better when the enemy has ways to constantly pressure your towers, like for example, a Nature's Prophet could be a big problem if he's not contested. Travels is better if you aren't required to be involved in fights early on. Travels is better if the enemy doesn't have any decent catch to stop you from split pushing. Travels is better if you can afford to be greedy. That is, you don't require an item like Yules or Kaya Sange for survivability early on. Lastly, if you don't give a fuck about any of the above, it comes to preference and whatever feels better to you. Lastly, how do you deal with heroes that don't care about your magic output? Or how do you counter BKBs? Puck as a hero has a very low cooldown spells. When it comes to itemization, the only item that lets you directly address this issue is a Hex, but you rarely ever buy a Hex on Puck because other items are more necessary on the hero. The way to address these issues is to never hard commit on these heroes. Basically, Puck is very elusive and can go in and out very easily. You can force BKBs, spells, and then re-engage. Octarine amplifies this for your hero. You can apply these metas to almost any hero on the mid roll and learn to itemize efficiently. I hope this was helpful. I will be doing this on support and offlane next, so if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.